So, welcome to the latest edition of the Student First Community Update. Good to see a good turnout again, so thanks to everyone for coming. Today really it is a run through just of the projects and where we're at with each of those, and we've got Andrea going to chat to you guys a little bit about some of the communications work we've been doing in the challenge space, and of course, if time allows, any Q&A we can capture at the end there. So to kick off this morning, we are going to start with James Pearson to run through the core project, which will have a focus on some of the delivery stuff that's coming up in the near future.
See if this works.
It does. Yep, it works. Well done. Well done. It drops out.
Oh, here we go. Hey, there we go.
It's an ad for Sony.
Yeah.
Oh, so is that an
Just wanted a word from our sponsor. Yeah, well, so we're in the technical space, as you can tell. I'm trying to think how many one-liners I can come up with.
Song and dance routine.
Yeah.
interpret
Look, I'll just start talking to it while this is getting all queued up. Hold on. There we go. Cool. All right, so I wanted to show you, this should look familiar, just to give us a little bit of context. So this is going to be a similar update to the stuff I've given before. I'm just talking about what have we released, what are we releasing, and how do we go about prioritizing that and organizing it. So the August release, we saw some work on the course selector, which saw some demos and things like that, but we haven't fully released yet. And working on getting a display offer of place in the agent portal, staff-only admin functions, which is that admin portal for staff to be able to go in and help manage applications, which is stuff that we started here, and you'll see that as a theme as we go through. Validation in EE, so this was talking about when you put in something incorrectly in a field in easy enrollment form, it giving you a little bit of guidance of what you've put in wrong and where. So hopefully that'll reduce a bit of the support calls and some of that burden. EE International, so we discussed this before, that was looking at how do we cater our easy enrollment form for a wider audience, because it was very domestically focused. So we're trying to open up that language so that it's simple and clear, but also more relevant to international students. And then some technical work to help us understand when things are going bump in the night. So that takes us to looking at the upcoming future. September 27th is what we've currently got spec'd as our next release. So this is to get stuff out there directly before all of the busy October season. And this is where the course selector is going to finally drop in production, and people are actually going to be actively using it beyond just that CUP cohort. The admin portal, the staff admin portal, is still stuff that we're working on. So this is our V2, or we call it Dave Access, for those of you who know Dave Quinnell. But this is still testing things through to make sure that it's going to be useful, largely for the contact center, and we're aiming to drop that in production out in the November release at the end of November. And then EE feedback, so this is more enhancements to the easy enrollment form. We've talked about this numerous times, but I'm just going to keep being a broken record here because it's important. So the way we work is prioritized based off of your feedback. And this EE feedback is work that has come from assist tickets, through the Student First shared mailbox, anything that you report to us saying, hey, this isn't working for us, or students are getting confused here, or this is a blocker. That's stuff that we prioritize and bring in as feedback that then goes in enhancements to the easy enrollment form. So that's what that is. We're going to be doing some more work in November on EE International. So this is helping to get that agent portal across the line. Right now we've got UC Link, which is going to be, I believe, changed to UC Connect. But then we've also got the agent portal, which is kind of an interface for agents on the easy enrollment form. Now, at the moment, we're in an interesting little dance where we're trying to get confidence to transition agents and all of the internationals that they represent across to the easy enrollment form. But there's some drawbacks because the proof of concept that was UC Link has some clear advantages as a proof of concept. It doesn't have to integrate with all the systems in the same manner. And so by standardizing things, we have to make some trade-offs. And this is looking to improve the features and functionality that we need for agents to feel comfortable to transition across. So that's the big focus coming up in November. Like I said, getting the admin portal out there. So as people throughout October are enrolling and we get more and more calls in the contact center, give them some tools to help support and reduce that burden. And then returning work. So this is all about the qualification selector. We're looking at things for returning students who are choosing the same qual, returning students who are choosing a different qual, and trying to take functionality out of UCSW and bring it into MyUC. I think we talked about this last time, but just as a reminder, the work that we're doing is decomposing this convoluted organic system that is kind of developed, right? So over time, we keep adding new functionality, new systems, and it turns into this kind of big tangled web of IT. And what we're trying to do is bring those processes in, standardize them, streamline them, so it's more cost effective, but it's also more functional, more useful, and you have the ability to make changes to it to improve the student experience over time. So that's what we're doing at the moment. We're trying to take more and more of that functionality away from UC Student Web and bring it into MyUC, and this is looking at that qualification selector side of things. Right, so that is what's coming up, and I just wanted, before I sit down, to show you how do we actually work. We've talked about what we've done. I've shown you messy hand-drawn sketches, and I've shown you these lucid chart diagrams, but this is what we actually use to manage things operationally in the Student First program. So what you're looking at there is the September, or I guess it was in August release, V7. Oh no, sorry, I lied to you. V7 is what we're working on at the moment. Yeah, so the September release. So what you see here is a system called Jira. This is how we manage our throughput. All of our work is managed in here. You have unique identifiers on the side. These are the ticket numbers for what we call epics. If you remember some of the conversations we've had about agile way of working, has these funny names like epics and user stories and things like this. I think it's to try to make IT sound cooler or more relatable, but I'm not sure how well that works. So then the summary of these are the things that we're actually delivering. So a lot of this is all stuff to go into the course selector. So looking at curriculum groups, course status change push. So it's kind of, your eyes can glaze over as you start to look at this because there's a lot of context required. But these are all the different little things under the hood that try to make the course selector work functionally and effectively. And the reason that I'm telling you this is because your feedback and you as subject matter experts or people that work with subject matter experts, that work with the business analysts that go out and talk to you or the project managers, all of those conversations turn into these epics. And these epics then get delivered by our delivery team, which I, with Nina, the delivery manager, and the release manager, Debs, watch like a hawk to make sure that we're actually progressing effectively and figure out if there are any blockers. Priorities, this is where you guys come into the picture as well. So there are a few ways that this happens. We listen to the business benefit, the business value that you say this feature is going to provide, and try to weigh that up with technical constraints or dependencies. Sometimes something has a lot of value, but you need to deliver something else that seems less valuable to clear the way to get to that other more valuable thing. So a lot of technical conversation and stuff goes into that, but also really, really important to have your feedback on what is business value? Why is this a priority? And is it a priority for this part of the university or for a larger part of the university? So that's where all that gets measured up. And it's important to think about the DMA. So some of you are on a DMA or some of you may know about the DMAs. So this is a decision-making authority. And what it is it's a group of people who are supposed to represent the interests of the students and the university to try to make the best decisions about what are we going to build on your behalf. That's where we also get a lot of the input on what we prioritize. And the priorities are important because that's what we're going to work our hardest to deliver in the order of priority. And then you've got the different people who are accountable for different aspects, whether it's the analysis from the business side of things. These are the people you'll probably be familiar with working with. The actual lead developers who are cranking that work out. The architects who are overseeing how does it fit into the other parts of the system that we're building. And then whether or not we've groomed the work, refined it, when we're going to, all of that. So this is how we organize ourselves, and this is the backlog of work that we have. So when you hear backlog, this is what we're referring to. This is the stuff that we are loading up and working on and preparing and prioritizing. So if you have questions about what our priorities are, what we're delivering and why, this is what we're delivering in the order of priority that we're delivering it. And if there are questions or comments about it, bring it up with the project managers that you work with, bring it up with the change managers, bring it up with the business analysts, because this is how we change it, and this is what we actually deliver. Any thoughts or questions before I sit down?
What's the difference between grooming, analysis, incubate?
Yeah, good question. So if you think, you've heard of the mythical pipeline. So I think I've talked about this before. A lot of the work that we do in software development is invisible. So we have to come up with ways of trying to visualize this work. And just like any other workstation or a factory or anything, we've got a whole life cycle from incubating an idea, which is a conversation over here where someone in the business like yourselves says, hey, this is pissing me off, this is hard, this is frustrating. We get students talking about this problem all the time. Can you do something about it? Taking that and saying, okay, that's an idea, sounds painful, let's talk about it. That's where a business analyst comes in, moves from incubation into analysis. The business analyst says, what's the business value here? Why is this happening? What's the process supposed to be? Who does that? What are the roles and responsibilities? Trying to understand all of that. Once they get that carved up, then that's how we get our requirements. Those requirements then go through a refining session or what we call a BUTS session. Business analyst, user experience, tech lead, tester, and a subject matter expert. Those people in the room help decide, okay, from those requirements, how do we actually build this? What are we building? That turns into grooming or refinement, where we're actually grooming the work for technical stories, which is essentially building the instructions for a developer to take those instructions, put them into their keyboard, and actually build what was discussed over there. So then that's in progress. And then we go into dev done, which is development is done, but we need to polish everything, make sure that it's not going to break, make sure everything is reviewed. Then it goes into test review and release.
So with the DMAs,
Yes.
they seem to be cancelled a lot, and I haven't been on one for quite some time. I'm just wondering, how is it because of the work you're currently doing is so far back prioritised that, because there's other things that will probably come up in those DMAs that have come to pass, that they're quite urgent that we look at them now?
So I actually just brought this up with Brendan earlier today. So at the moment, we need to reevaluate some of the ways that the DMA is done, because I don't think it's done as effectively as it should be, and it has been canceled a lot. So that's actually a pet project of mine, to look at how do we get that back on track to give the value and the business their voice and how the decisions are made. So part of it has been representation. It hasn't been necessarily a wide enough representation on some DMAs to make the right decisions for the whole university about their part of the project. So that's one thing that needs to be assessed. Another thing needs to be assessed is, what is the purpose of each DMA? Because we have these independent DMAs, but they're not lined up, they're not joined up, there isn't a coherent strategy, which there probably needs to be. And then the other side of it is, how do we make sure that we don't waste your time, that we have a templated or structured format for bringing a decision to you and saying, this is the decision that we think needs to be made. This is what we propose as different options. This is why we recommend this option. We don't have that structure well enough in place. It's okay. So last year, you'll remember specifically, Marcus did an awesome job of bringing structure to the DMA when we were trying to get off of SITs. That's what I would like to get back to. so that you have regular meeting, you know what's coming, you know in advance what is written down in the format that it's going to be in, so you can have your thoughts and opinions and any questions or comments reviewed before we actually meet. And then we have a structured format for the way that we meet. So that is a place where we've got a current pain point, and we need to get that back on track.
With regard to the agent portal, can you clarify the work that's going to be done in November?
Mhm.
Is that to enable the new agent portal to go live in November?
Indeed it is. Now, it's already live. Whether or not people use it is another question. So it needs to be, what we need to do is we need to migrate agents over.
Across, that's right. Because at the moment the team is still ghosting the applications into Jade.
Yeah.
So it just to be clear that like our workload is only going to increase through to the start of February 2019. So from a resourcing point of view, I need to be really clear that it's going to be ready, because otherwise we'll need additional resources to assist with the ghosting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there are two key priorities that we talked about with Sonam as far as what needs to happen before she's comfortable, from her perspective as a subject matter expert, to start actively migrating agents across. And that's making sure that we've got logins sorted so that they have an appropriate way to log in and that that's very clear and organized. And then making sure that that student handover process is really well organized so that we don't actually rush things and then confuse students because they worked with an agent, they got this strange letter, or they didn't get a letter, but they got admitted. So we need to work through the handover process and the enrollment process. That's what that bit of work is going to prioritize, as well as a few enhancements that have been on that prioritized backlog. Whether or not you'll actually be comfortable enough after that to migrate agents across is still a business decision. But what we're building, our desire, is to see that happen as fast as possible, and the November release be the deal maker as far as what we need to get across the line to be in that position. Any other thoughts or questions? Great.
Thank you, James.
Don't do what I did last time.
Cool. So next up we have Rach Monte, and Kat is here also, I think, to assist, to run through academic guidance.
Cool.
Do you want to work through these first and then?
Do you want to do the demo first?
No, you can go through what you want.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks for that, James. I thought that was a really, really nice summary of the way that we work and stuff. And hope it was useful for just kind of, you guys have probably listened to that and thought, oh yeah, we're part of that process right now. We've been grooming all the way along the way. So I thought that was a really nice summary. What I wanted to do was two things. One is I wanted to take you through the timeline of kind of what's going to happen with course selector completion and class of honors work over the next couple of months. And the other thing was to sort of introduce the demo for the course selector that's going to go live in September. And it's kind of cool that we were just on the topic of DMAs, because the working group that exists for academic guidance, you may not have realized that you are the DMA, but you are the DMA. And so what is going to be demoed today is kind of a culmination of so many months of decisions that the DMA has kind of been discussing and put into place and stuff. And I'm really proud of the work that you guys have done kind of cerebrally thinking about it, and also the work that Kat and the project team have kind of done from the back end to build it up. So what are you going to see over the next couple of months? Well, there's some invisible stuff and there's some visible stuff. Some invisible stuff that is going to start to be in Jade that you won't see unless you kind of peel back the layers in the depths of Jade are there have been calculations for classes of honors that Rachel Geddes and Sam Eason have been working through with all of the colleges. We've been speaking with you academic managers to sort of understand, first of all, what are the highest enrolling qualifications, and also the qualifications that you'd really like to have classes of honors tested in. And we've put those calculations into Jade. Now, that doesn't mean that there is any change in process or practice to you guys. There'll be a meeting just in a couple of weeks to kind of talk through this in more detail. But what that means is that if you were just curious to see, hey, I wonder what class of honors someone is going to graduate with given the work that they've done, you'd be able to get some sort of number right now. In terms of completion groups, you guys have heard quite a bit about that. In the background, as you know, Rach Geddes and Sam have been working at actually building up these completion rules. So those of you that are more familiar with the regulations than I am, or as familiar with the regulations as I am, Section 3 that we revised when we did the regulations review is all about the structure of the qualification. You know, you have to take 120 points at 100 level, this many at 200 level, this many within your major, this many within your minor. All of those rules have been built against certain qualifications within the system, so that if someone wanted to be able to look into JADE and say, has this person done enough to be able to graduate? You'd be able to assess that at that point in time. It is not for all of the qualifications, and it does not at this point trigger any activity. It doesn't trigger a letter for a student to say you're ready to graduate or anything along those lines. It just gives you greater insight into the state that a student is currently at. So lots of stuff we can do with that. And that's what the DMA or the working group is going to continue to discuss in the future. What this in particular, the completion groups, is doing for course selector is really interesting, because as you can imagine, those completion rules guide what a student should be able to select. So as we've discussed before, for example, if in order to complete your qualification, you have to complete 100, 200, and 300 level courses, well, my course selector should not show me 400, 500, and 600 level courses. So those completion rules that are created will flow into this course selector, which we'll be having UAT for on the 18th of September. Thank you very much for all of you who have accepted the invitation. And they will flow through to the student process. 27th of September, still? Yeah, is go live. So that is when things will be working in the system. But as you guys know, what goes live is all predicated around the course occurrences that go live. So even though this is go live in the system, the course occurrences, I believe it's the second Tuesday in October? Right, okay, 2nd of November, that's when actually the magic will be happening in the system. So once that happens, we'll do sort of a gradual release of curriculum groups. So those groups that actually guide, curriculum groups closely related to completion groups that actually guide the course selection process. And then after that, when people start to get close to completing, that's when you can test out the completion calculations and the classes of honors. So really, we're going to be working quite closely with each of the colleges to say, how are those completions going for you? How are those classes of honors going for you? So if I was you guys, I might have a couple of questions in my mind. The first one might be, what happens if something goes wrong? How are we going to prevent having a Massey-ish type experience? And the answer to that is that Lisa, in her infinite cleverness, has built a toggle switch against each of the qualifications, so that if, and we don't believe this will happen, and we are doing testing to ensure this doesn't happen, but you never know, if something goes wrong and we hear about it, we can instantly redirect the students back to UCSW. So that's our backup plan, but we are hoping we don't have to use it. Second question you might have is, you've talked about all these completion groups and these curriculum groups, Rachel. Well, how am I supposed to know what goes live when? Well, we are working with the DMA and the working group to get the sequencing and the clear picture of when those things go live. So they will know that. Central services groups are represented on that as well. But I'm actually keen, and you can feel free to email me through this, on whether or not you feel like there are other communication channels that we should make that visible through, like our intranet or something along those lines. Last thing you might want to know, or might be thinking, is, man, we do things a little bit differently in our college. I don't know about this class of honors thing. That's okay. We are always working to bring people in the middle, but we're also working to make sure that if you have quite particular needs, that we can build around that as well. So there may be some qualifications or some colleges that will go live a little bit later because their needs are unique, but your academic manager will be able to give you guidance around that. Does that sound okay? I am going to turn it over to the lovely Kat now. She'll take you through what's actually going to go live.
All right. Sorry, it's been idle. It looks like it has been idle for a little while. Okay, So what we have here is I've taken a demo student through the enrolment process. So I don't want to go through that one and labour that one again, but once they've come through, completed their enrolment and they're ready to select their courses, this is what they will be presented with, the My Applications page. Now looking around the room, some of you have done an exceptional job in UAT a couple of weeks ago, so this will be very familiar, and you will notice some of the changes that you raised that we've already implemented. For some of you that either haven't seen this before or haven't seen it for a little while, it would be a good introduction to where we're going. So the student just selects the resume application. And the first thing they're brought to is the course selection overview page. Now this is going to display for them the application and the degree that they've enrolled into. If they've got multiple enrolment options through here, we'd see a first option of Bachelor of Arts and maybe a second option of Science type thing. If it's a concurrent degree, we would see Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science within that one enrolment option through there. So students select view courses. So the course overview search page, you'll notice those that did UAT, that those big icons that looked like you could click on them and do something that actually didn't do anything have now been removed, and we've just replaced it with a little bit more of the guidance text through there. So students are able to search for courses using a mixture of the curriculum groups that Rachel was talking about, subjects, and course title or code information through there. Curriculum groups, at the moment the starter set is still a work in progress. There are duplicates, please just ignore that aspect. But given that we're on a BA, it's all courses for the BA is what's showing up through there. So given that, up the top here we can see from the degree that I've selected and my major being geography and the minor being classics. That's always visible to the student where they're at through there. So I'm going to search for my geography papers through there and just hit search. Now once a search has been completed, we're given some filters where the students can start to reduce the number of courses that have been found, or specifically I might want to look at only 200 level papers, or I might want to look at anything that's only in a particular semester. So that's just changing the results that are found and enabling them to hone in a little bit clearer on what it is that they want through there. So given that this is my first year, I'm doing geography as my major, I'm going to add all my first year papers through there. And when we add a course, we can see that they're added to the selection basket. The basket breaks it down into the semester indicators, so it's a nice easy visual for the student to understand where they're at, how their course load is being broken down. They can see at the top the total points that they've selected and then the points per course through there. I also have the ability to expand the card, get a little bit more detail about when it starts. You can click on the view course details, which will open another link, take them through in case they want any more details or information about that course in particular. If they want to, they can delete using the delete button through there. Now I've got classics as my minor, so I just use that and have a look at what's going on through here. For those that don't like the card view, they can toggle using that little button through there into a list view. So it's the exact same detail, exact same information, just presented in a different format for the student through there. And these are all sortable. So I can change based on course title, level, what I would like through there. So now I'm going to add, I don't know, we'll do Classics 105 and 111. So I've got 70 points in total. I don't know, I know somebody who's doing maths and I think that'd be pretty good. I was good at it at school, so I might want to do that as well. They do step 101. Okay, so we'll add that one in there. Now, I know that within my degree I can look for courses that sit outside my qualification. I'm quite interested in some product design work through here, so I'll just do a search. Actually, there's no courses found, and the reason for that being is that product design is not part of the BA course. And so how do we enable them to do that? We've got all bachelor degree level courses. So this is where any course that's available under a bachelor degree is in this data set here. So it's enabling the student to get to the data, but always presenting them with the data set that makes sense to them in that first instance. So I'll run that again. And yeah, product design there looks pretty good. So I can see now that I've got 120 points in total, which, you know, I'm a diligent student and I know that that's how many I would want to take for my first year, so I'm going to save those courses.
Well, you've got unaccounted for semester 2, you've got a workload problem.
Okay,
So why did it not tell you you had a workload problem?
nice wee segue there. So now that I've added my courses, and you get taken back to the selection overview page, and now I can see a breakdown, the same as we had in the selection basket, based on semester 1. I can see I've got my 30 points, my courses, semester 2, 90. And if I keep coming down, I'm going to see the enrolment checks related to the courses that I've added. So there's some information similar to what is in UCSW at the moment about telling students these are warnings only. So we don't want to freak them out and have them pull out of courses that they could potentially be doing, given that they can still proceed with prerequisite or workload errors sitting against the account. So I'm having a look here and I'm seeing that there's a prerequisite that I haven't met for Maths 102. And actually there's a workload issue as well. So semester 2, I've got too many courses going through there. So actually I need to go back to my courses. And actually I remember that that math course had 2 options. And I can see them there. And actually there's one in semester 2. So if I was to delete the one from semester 1, I know that that's now going to be good. I'm back to my 75 points. And I'll just add the one for semester 1 and save those. So now we can see that the workload errors have been resolved, but there's still this warning here. But you know what? I've passed NCEA level 3 and I excelled with my grades, and obviously I'm getting into enrol before the course detail results have come through. So I can add a note here. I have passed. Now that information, once I hit save and continue, will come down and sit against the ATE within JADE. So any information that they have will be available for the advisors or anybody who's looking at their enrolment as and when they see fit. But there's supporting documentation that I might want to load. I can go to the library.
In the notes section?
How does that appear in JADE?
Yeah, how do they appear in JADE in the notes? Or
By the magic of Lisa's fine piece of work. I don't know where it's sitting at the moment, but it will be against an attribute or a coded note somewhere.
So
It will
that
all be
student will appear on our agenda and
trained.
in some way viewing that.
Yep. Yep. So as they would appear on an agenda at the moment, it's just about giving them the ability to provide any more information that they see as fit that could maybe help you make that decision up front. It could be that if they're transferring in from another university and they've uploaded a copy of their transcript from there with similar courses, type aspect, they might say I've already reached the prerequisite for that because I've done a similar course. So that information is there available for you.
Has there been pushing both the domestic and international students to the liaison office for course planning?
Sorry, say that again.
It says the new students should contact liaison office, so that includes domestic and international.
Yes.
Is that the case, or have we piloted the sending lists out to the colleges for February intake? So is that a change? Like, is it to the liaison now for 2019
For international students?
Yeah.
That is not the agreed process. So I think it's a really good point, Jenny, is with international students, who do they contact? What is that
They
first?
should contact liaison.
they should in the real world,
Yes.
but currently it should be colleges.
Yeah.
So I think we need to
It's
chat
a
about
Trish
that.
discussion.
That sounds good.
Yeah, but so we know how we communicate to them in terms of who do they reach out to.
Absolutely. Yep. I'll take an action to take that one offline and touch base
Yeah, cool.
with who we need to go through from there. So once the student is happy with everything that they have selected, resolved any issues that they want, they can just hit save and continue, which will take them through to the declaration, where they agree and save and submit, confirming that submission.
I have yet to see a student read those.
You should test them on it. What does it say on line 3?
Yeah, I did have one student try to read it, and
And back to my applications overview page with status indicating that it has been submitted. And yeah, that's course selector. Questions? Yeah?
I like the changes you've made.
Sorry, I didn't actually point out all of them. Did you notice them quickly as we went through there? So the big icons have
Yeah.
gone.
I like that it sorts it by semester.
We've added points
Yeah.
where points were missing.
Yeah.
Have you removed that warning about if they've chosen something in semester 2 and haven't met prereqs because they haven't completed semester 1 yet? Remember that one we had?
I do remember that one. And the wider decision was to leave that one in with wording around it, which states you haven't yet met the prerequisite for this course. No action is required. You don't need to do anything about it now, but just be aware if you don't pass the course in semester 1, it may put you at risk for your course in semester 2.
Maybe I'm being simple here, but quiet me, Deborah. But when you go to, you know how you'd selected all courses for the BA and then you wanted product design?
Yep.
The bit it gives you a little warning thing, check your spelling or your course code or whatever. Would all newbies know that, or check your search? Because otherwise the student might think that there are no courses in product design,
Yes.
whereas the search is actually the issue.
So
It's well spotted, and the wording for that one is in the process of being changed. So that's the whole the no courses found message that we had that's existing for CUP at the moment. And in that sense, it is just you can only put in your code or title. So it is a spelling aspect through there that you're potentially not getting anything for. Now that we're bringing curriculum groups in, it will be a different wording to say, look at your search options and your parameters through there.
Thank you.
For returning students, if they change their qualification, can they bring their courses to their new qual, or is that next phase not?
Yeah, it's a good question. Ideally, what we would want, but right now you still have to do the transfer out of qualification.
All right, I'm just conscious of time, so thanks a lot, Kate.
All right. Thank you.
So next up, we just have an update from Brendan on scholarships.
Right. Yeah, there's no update on my calls because I think, as mentioned last time, that's live. But we've done a couple of other changes just around sort of bug fixes, and we've passed it over to ITS. So as of sort of a week or so ago, they're now sort of the owners and supporters of that application, and will of course provide support if needed. And then I just need to formally close things out, and yeah, that's that one. So scholarships, whoops, other way around. Okay, so what we've been doing, we've sort of had a number of focuses as per usual. So starting with Community Force itself, we've done, I don't know if you remember last time, we had like a prototype of how we're going to store all this data that we've captured. So we've done a lot more work in that area, and we know right down to sort of a granular field level, sort of 80-90%, what we want to store, where we want to store it, how we want to store it, and how it's all going to work. Although there's a slight hold on that now, and this is going to be a theme that I'm talking about going through, and I'll talk at the end. This little thing down below might give you a clue about what's happening. Last time I mentioned there were some issues around the log-ons. So what was happening is people getting a bit confused about, firstly, there's people using social log-on, and they had the wrong names in Google and Facebook, and there was no way to actually change that in Community Force. So we did a bit of a minor change, so people in the scholarships office now can actually modify the names, and people are prompted to say, is this your name? Are you sure this is your name, before we send out a reference. I don't know if anyone noticed, but in the demonstration before, people were also getting confused because they were coming in and they were thinking they were applying for a scholarship via the MyUC application. So that is, they're actually applying to enrol, and then they ring the scholarships office and saying, I don't know what's happening with my scholarships application, but they're actually applying to enrol. So we put a link up there that basically redirected them back. And there was another thing that we were looking to improve that unfortunately Community Force didn't release properly, so I'm still waiting for them to get back to me on the resolution on that one. What else? We've been doing a bit of support, and also our main focus has really been on supporting the rounds. So we've closed off the scholarships office. Has closed off the school leavers round. So in the end, there's nearly a couple of thousand completed applications, which is quite a lot. So we've got a couple of weeks to really go through and think, okay, exactly how are we assessing eligibility, dealing with the selection committees and doing the assessment, the award, tracking approval and all that. So given the time frame we've got, we're really sort of taking a very MVP approach. We know we want to try and build as much as we can in Community Force, so there's some things that we'll take out of Jade, like the lettering and other things, but it's not going to be a complete overhaul because we're only got a couple of weeks to do it. And also there's been a bit of work done in Community Force in terms of setting up the applications for postgrad as well. So again, that's been a sort of a just-in-time thing there. So we've managed to pretty much talk to all the colleges and everyone to finalise all that and get approval from AAC on some of these initiatives that I was talking about earlier in terms of the ongoing review, rationalisation of scholarships, selection committee, alignment of opening and closing dates, and the hardship or the general criteria for assessment. And we've just got academic board who need to basically endorse, I should say, on I think it's the 14th of September. Again, you'll see a little frozen sign here, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So we're pretty much finalised there with the guidelines and the regulations. So we really just need to get that to SAC. I think it's like 95% there. And then we've been doing a bit of work just around the storage of the ID and the student ID in Community Force. So we've got a quote back from Community Force, which I haven't distributed to anyone. I don't think that's going to fly. So I have to figure out what option B is, which we do have one, but it's not going to be as optimal, but we need to work through that. And we've done a bit of work. The pipeline that James mentioned before, there's one thing that we want, I don't know where it is on the priority list, but whatever we do in Community Force, that will support that. So, the goodbyes, so we've got two goodbyes, which is really most of our project team. We've got Beth, who's our full-time analyst, who's going to be leaving next week, into next week, for maternity leave. And unfortunately, we've got Leanne, who's our product owner and SME key person to help drive everything, who's also departing this week. So that, and also the fact that a lot of these initiatives, or pretty much everything, all funnels into the scholarships office space, and they're very over capacity. So I've basically just frozen some of these for now because there just isn't the ability to continue them internally in the project, or as said with the scholarships office as well. And that's also on the data storage thing as well. So what we need to do is really work out how the project is going to proceed, and so this is what we're sort of working through now in terms of how do we get dedicated resource to start picking this up and sort of driving it over the line, because especially with Leanne's absence, the scholarships office just needs to focus on processing these 2,000, getting this stuff across the line and moving into the postgrad phase. They just don't have the capacity to look at this, and we don't want to start any further or start engagement in detail on some of these with the colleges unless we've got guaranteed capacity in the scholarships office to support. So that's the focus of this week and next week, and hopefully we'll have a nice plan. But there will be, I'd say, over the next month most likely, a bit of a sort of hiatus on a lot of this stuff, and then hopefully all going to plan. We get the resource and then it will pick up again, but that's still to be confirmed and worked through. But this has to happen regardless. So we've got a small amount of community force resource, generally about several hours a week. So they'll support this, and I'll oversee things as well. So I'll have hopefully an update of how things are going to progress next time and what I've done. So, any questions or queries? No?
Cool. Thanks, Brendan. And we will move through Tim's two projects.
Cool. I'll be pretty brief on this because I think you've already touched on the key one. There are 6 agents now using the new portal, so we are effectively live. At this point, it's around the business team, so IRO being comfortable about transitioning agents across onto that portal. And given the time of the year, and Jenny, you'll appreciate this, is that this is the busiest time of year for international applications. So trying to transition agents during their busiest time is certainly not the easiest thing in the world to do. So the decision was made 2 months ago that the transition would happen after the 2019 enrolments push, which is in December. So the bulk of the applications for 2019 are received by the end of November, sort of tails off over Christmas. We did a transition last year of agents off SITS onto the UC Link portal. So we've got a precedent for that. And really at this stage, it's about making sure the comms is clear, making sure IRO and the comms team are clear on the messages that need to go out to agents and that the platform is stable. And there are a couple of technical pieces that we need to do in order to make sure things are ready to go. But generally speaking, Agent Portal will just track its way through to transition at the end of the year. You got anything else to add, Jenny?
No.
Fingers crossed, yeah. We'll be there. I mean, one of the benefits of having agents testing is that we'll learn what's working and what's not before we really push a whole lot through the system. So that's one thing it's been great that IRO have got to the point that they're comfortable to actually use the portal. All right. Does anyone else have any questions on the agent portal? No.
Just not a question, but just a point.
Yes.
It doesn't end once they transition.
No.
The continuous improvement enhancements, just like anything else.
Yeah. Right. Mission enrollment management. So I guess there's a big story behind this project because as the months have rolled on, we embarked on this project with the goal of transitioning the way that we work off Jade and into this new platform. But as we kind of went through that, we also wanted to pick off low-hanging fruit. We did a bunch of discovery work with you all. We've got a list of 250 problems that had been identified that range across from recruitment, postgraduate, the way that course advice is given, the resource challenges out in the colleges, just the handing over of workflow. I could go on. But you're all familiar with the challenges around administering this process. We were given the direction to go and pick off those big issues and actually deliver business benefit where we could in the interim. And as a secondary, we have parked this idea of getting off Jade, or at least that has been our approach to date, because the decision was made, we've got all this other technical work across the program to do, we don't have the resource capacity to really lean into this, so see what you can do whilst using Jade to make business process improvement. So international enroll in person was an example of pure process improvement, and we learned a lot and we're in a good position to do something very different in 2019. The teaching program, and Sarah, you're familiar with this, Jenny, to a lesser extent, Tracy. So aligning teaching with the way the university as a whole has worked. This is where we've really had to roll up our sleeves and test really how much we can do with Jade. The theory was, well, if it works really well with teaching, we'll roll through the other programs across the university, fix things up in Jade, and then next year move into our new platform. However, in doing that teaching work, it's taken a lot longer than we thought it would. It's been a lot harder to do, particularly from a technical perspective. And everywhere we look, a little requirement from a comms perspective, we've got our hands shackled behind our backs. And when we try and make that change, what looks like a sentence change ends up being 2 or 3 days of effort, plus an under-the-hood inquiry into the underlying architecture. And we've said, actually, we can't go any further down this track. We need to stop and reset and really focus on that original goal of how do we decouple from Jade completely around this. So teaching is wrapping up as we speak. We've got to a point of stability with the new processes. That's going to bed in over the next 3-4 months. We'll continue to monitor until following the enrolments ending in March next year, just making sure the teams have got the support they need. And we've got a new project manager, so Ali Mackay has joined in the last month. Ali is really coming in to help myself and Rach around some of these bigger rocks. You know, I sort of start to talk about these things as big rocks to move. So we can start strategically changing the underlying platform and where the work gets done. In order to do that, we do need to stop this focus on delivering quick wins and really set our sights on making a step change, as we're starting to talk at Program Board about, is how do we really get ourselves off this platform that constrains the way that we work. And we're coming up with an approach to do that in a managed way. Lisa, I remember those words from our various conversations around how do we do this safely, how do we not leave postgraduate out, and I think that's our biggest concern, is how do we manage this transition without disrupting the way that we work. You know, the Massey kind of scenario has come up today. It comes up once or twice every month. How do we avoid doing that? And one of the ways is that we take a very focused approach at doing this transition, but it does mean we are going to have to stop doing some of these smaller pieces of work and going after those short-term benefits, which means that there are going to be perhaps some things that I know, Trish, you and I have started to talk about, things that potentially we would have done under our original approach. We're going to have to just say, we can't do this because we need to focus on this bigger rock that we need to move. That's a lot of words. Do I need to clarify anything for anyone?
Can you keep some bits of Jade alive while you suck out other bits of Jade, so you can chunk it a little bit?
Absolutely.
It's a little bit scary.
Oh, totally it is. Yeah. Well, it's scary for us as well. You know, think about the brain surgeon trying to do brain surgery and making sure that you don't create any collateral damage that's going to leave someone with a lasting impact. You know, we're very, very aware of the dangers of doing this. And again, I think Ali, feel free to speak up, but we've spent the last 2 or 3 weeks really thinking about how do we make this step change? What's the approach that we can do it in an iterative way, minimising the impact on current operations? Because that's the key thing. You need to keep being able to do your work. Lisa?
Well,
Tracy?
I was just going to say, are you going to get back to the small rocks, or do they just get pushed by the wayside and eventually we forget they're there?
No. So
what are you going to do?
The small rocks will get bundled up as part of this step change. So instead of going, oh, here's a small problem we're going to just deal with in isolation, we're going to deal with it in end to end as we do that shift.
So are you going to label these rocks?
Yes.
So are we going to have a new, well, you know what I mean. It's like, are we going to have a new list of?
Yes.
So a new plan?
Absolutely new plan with different prioritisation kind of controls. Again, more data that says this is why we're going after this cohort first, this is why this is going to be the first to move. And again, some of the motivations for us is around building confidence and momentum in our approach. So we may not necessarily prioritise a cohort of students to transition across because it represents the most business value, but it's because it's the simplest and it's the safest for us to move across. So we can then come back to you and say, well, we've done it with this one. This next cohort is just one further step of complexity. Let's try with them and just slowly grow that pie. So we're not going to lose sight of them for sure, Tracy. It's just we will deal with them as we move and as an end-to-end. I guess this new approach will also mean that we are taking an end-to-end student approach to the change. So when we do lift a cohort of students out, their entire journey will be improved. And the other students that are left back in Jade, well, they'll be just using the business as usual process. And I guess a question that bubbles up in my head as I say this is, there may be that concern for you around having two workspaces. So again, we've thought about that. How do we minimise or completely avoid that duplicate or split workspace? So we've got a strategy around that. So I guess, look, this is all me just putting some flags up and signalling the things that are going on internally around how do we change the game.
So are we using this opportunity to enhance linkages with other systems?
Yeah. So it, again...
So it's not just going to be like a Jade or equivalent, it's going to look at how it interacts with the web, with everything else, to make it a more fluent system?
So there will be obviously some limitations here in terms of how far we can go on our scope. But again, because we're thinking about it from a student perspective, how do I experience this as I move through the system? Then as things pop up, we'll go, oh, we need to fix that. We need to consider it. We may not do it there and then, but that will be brought into consideration.
And I'm assuming as the students journey through, it's the staff members that are using it as well.
Again, you know, thinking about it from a student perspective is really useful, but on the flip side of that, you know, as I've said, is we're also considering how does that impact the way that you work, and how do we minimise, if not completely avoid, having to go into two systems? Because to me that doesn't look like success. That looks like complexity, but if we end up in that position, then again, it won't be a, oh surprise, this is going to happen. It will be, okay, we may need to go here, how do we manage this? So again, yeah, look, this is not an easy process.
How long is a piece of string?
Well, that's it, Tracy.
How long
Like,
do you want to do?
what we need to do is that first cohort. It's likely that first cohort is going to be our domestic high school leavers because they are the simplest group, and we may even limit that down to just, you know, Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Commerce, and really get that cohort down to something small and manageable and test that process.
It's probably worth mentioning, Tim, that
Yeah.
just for any of the projects, once we get the formula cracked, it's easy to replicate.
Yeah.
And so our program is finite, but you obviously have an IT team that are getting trained up in sort of what we're doing. So even if we only have certain cohorts that move across, the legacy of how we've kind of transferred them will flow on to them. And they should be able to continue fighting the good fight.
When we get visibility of the new
Approach. So we've got an internal kick-off next week, and then once we've got our ducks in a row, and obviously a big part of this is actually communicating with you all around how we're doing it, what are the risks, what are the concerns we have, what's your part to play. Yeah, again, Eliza, you know, data is a big part of this. So again, once we are firm on our approach, then we'll come and communicate and start working it through.
So in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. well, again, after our conversation on Monday, it may kick off a whole lot more, but I mean, Trish, we'll continue to talk about where things are tracking.
And have they extended the deadline?
Extended the
It
deadline?
seemed like you have a finite timeframe here. Have they approved an extended timeframe for this? Because this is a wee bit of a, I would call a glitch in the matrix. So are they going to extend, or are we going to suddenly have to shoehorn a hell of a lot into a short space of time?
So I guess a couple of things there is we always knew this would be a multi-year. I think if you remember back to the kickoff, we said this was going to be multi-year. We'd embark on trying to solve some of these problems and get as far as we could go. And then how do we make a step change now that we've realised what we have? We're going through the stage gate approval process for next year, which what that means is we're shaping up what the priorities of work are for next year, and this is one of the key pieces. Do we have more time? No, the program is still scheduled to end in mid-2020. But a big piece of next year is around framing up what transition of the program into a continuous improvement practice looks like. And to your point, Rach, is that the patterns that we set up over the next 18 months, they will be the things that we'll be looking to transition. So if we haven't completed all of the work, because again, Tracy, how long's a piece of string? We may find it's a lot easier, we may find it's a lot harder. The key thing will be how do we transition that in so it continues along, and this is kind of to the flavour that Brendan's talking about in scholarships. We've kind of set a direction, and one of our responsibilities is to make sure that transitions into a machine that can continue to kind of work through the remaining work. Probably not the answer you're looking for.
Well, no, but I'll beat on about this, that we all know through our experiences of the past that BAU often does not get developments in the areas that are left behind. So whatever is not done by middle of 2020, people may have to accept the fact that it won't be done for a very long time.
So I guess one thing on that, and what is the time? We're out of time.
We're out of time. That's
Okay.
right. No, I'm just saying.
One last thing I will say is that there is collective view at senior management level that a continuous improvement vehicle outside of the existing BAU support model is going to be required. So the university is going to have to invest into continuous improvement. What that looks like in practice and what that means for some of the things that perhaps don't get done, we're not sure, but at least it's a good signal. Cool.
Alrighty. We have run over time a little bit, so we're going to park the little communications piece that Andrew was going to run through today, because I think we'll have less project update for next month. So we will skip through that. Obviously we are due to meet again on the 3rd of October. Just a really quick reminder about that feedback channel. If you have got things that you want to feed into us, please, rather than going direct to staff, individual staff on the program that you may have worked with in the past and used to directly contact and get stuff done, please try and feed it through these main channels of Assist Jobs or the Student First inbox. Thanks again for coming.